Hey everyone. Well, I can't use my usual Wastelanders greeting since we're in a whole new world. Cyrodiilians? Cyrodiilites? I got it. Greetings, citizen. Anyway, welcome to our first Elder Scrolls Oblivion run. Leading off an upcoming series of Oblivion runs with Destruction Magic only is going to be a fun time. Let's dive right into the rules of this challenge. In combat, I can only use Destruction Magic. While there's no restriction on what I can wear, armor kinda dilutes spell effectiveness the heavier it is. So even though it's not banned, we're not gonna use anything more than simple clothing. We're playing as a blaster mage, so I think it's best for us to embrace being a glass cannon. Items such as potions, lockpicks, and accessories such as rings and amulets are fine, and obviously quest items like Bands of the Chosen, which if you don't wear them, you can't beat the game. And I'm allowed to use sigil stones to enchant anything we wear, as it'll be nice to benefit from the small minor bonuses provided by the enchanted item. Though I'm gonna say chameleon enchantments on equipment, not allowed because, a chameleon is super broken, but we'll get back to that. And although there are staffs with destruction magic spells, we're gonna ban those too. We're the ones casting the spells, not the staff. We're playing as a Dunmer, so while we won't be allowed to use the Ancestral Guardian racial, another awesome racial that comes from choosing this race is the passive bonus to destruction magic, so we'll start off with a higher skill, making Lord Dagon proud. I gotta say too, it's been a while since I played this game, so I'm super pumped for this run. There's just something magical, no pun intended, about this game. I used to play this game a ton when I was younger, so there's a lot of nostalgic sentiment behind my hype too. Oh, and since this is our first Oblivion run on the channel, we're going to be going through the tutorial. And because we start with Flare, a destruction spell, what better way for us to lead off? We can get XP in our destruction skill while we clear out the tutorial. The rats, goblins, and zombies are pretty easy to take out, and Flare, while it's weak, doesn't cost much magicka to cast, even as a first level character. I gotta say, it's pretty fun to go through this area again. I will be starting an Oblivion Let's Play by the time this video is up, so this was a nice little refresher for getting back into practice. That said, I don't consider myself good at this game, definitely out of practice, but I do enjoy Oblivion a lot, so hey, I'm gonna throw in a few challenge runs for this game on the channel here and there, as well as the aforementioned Let's Play. Very excited. As for our Dunmer's hero class, we're gonna make a custom one. The level up system in this game manages to be fascinating and absurd at the same time. We gain experience points through leveling our major skills. Major skills gain 25% more XP than minor skills, as you have to level each skill individually. Any that we do not select are set as minor skills. Every skill levels at a different pace, with Conjuration leveling the fastest and, I think, feel free to correct me, Restoration Magic as the slowest. Destruction level's kinda slow, but since it's our only means of attack, we'll be able to gain XP for it organically throughout the course of the game. As mentioned before, going through the tutorial with the Flare spell gives us some early destruction XP, so that's cool. Our character also has one of many signs available to them, each one offering some minor benefit. For our protagonist, I went with the lady for a bit more willpower and endurance. Endurance is great because health is kinda sorta important, and willpower not only dictates magicka regen, but this stat influences the Destruction School of Magic, so willpower's a stat we want to make sure we invest in. We'll also be covering the main story, and speaking of which, here's a rundown of what we've experienced so far. A group of fanatics have assassinated the sons of the Emperor, and his bodyguards, the Blades, attempt to get him to safety, only for their mission to fail, and only one of 3 Blades we met back in the prison cell surviving the experience. Emperor Septim gives us a special amulet called the Amulet of Kings, an artifact that's been in the Septim family for generations. Before dying, he asks us to find his illegitimate son. We'll go into more detail about the cult's motives later on, but it's clear they want the royal bloodline expunged from existence. With the Amulet of Kings in hand, and the location of the Emperor's trusted confidant made known to us, it's time to head out. To take out some bandits! Volvaren's an awesome dungeon for early game players. Technically enemy scale with the player, but how many of y'all made your first pit stop here at Volvaren? At level 1, the bandits outside and inside of the dungeon have mostly fur armor with iron tier weapons, so this should be a great warm-up and a fun way to get back into the rhythm of Oblivion's gameplay. Now, iron tier weapons might be the weakest of the bunch, but considering that we have no armor outside of our clothes, so no armor, we gotta be careful still. That bandit with the iron warhammer messed us up pretty good. Real glad I made a pit stop over at Edgar's discount spells for the Shocking Touch spell. Deals 10 shock damage, so we have something stronger than Flare should enemies get into melee range. That said, we obviously don't want to be getting hit by melee weapons, and another thing we gotta watch out for in this dungeon is that some of the bandits are Dunmer, and they get the same racial bonuses that we do, one of which is added resistance to fire, so Flare's really not gonna help too much there. Still, they're not too bad, and in addition to bandits, there are undead down here, and they're not too tough to take out either. What we really want down here in Vilverin are these items called Welkin Stones. They're these nice little, crystals? Yeah, they look like crystals to me. They're these nice crystals that have the awesome benefit of restoring our magicka to full, no matter what percentage it's at. Now, as we clear our way through this awesome dungeon, making our way to the very end here, we get to fight the final boss, a necromancer, and yes, of course, he can summon stuff, but the summons aren't going to amount to much if we can take him out lickety-split. A couple of flares and a nice shocking touch, he is donezo. Between the Welkin Stones and the stylish dark shirt and the black pants that we got from this guy, really made it worth coming here, and of course, some destruction XP. We did get to Novice throughout our time here. But really, at the end of the day, it's all about looking stylish in this run, because if we can't wear armor, by God, we're gonna look good while we're casting spells, and those clothes don't have any weight capacity, so that's even better. That said, let's go ahead and get a move on with the main plot, shall we? So, we're looking for Emperor Septon's surviving son. Our first little pit stop is a quiet, unassuming ranch called Wayne Priory. Here's where we meet up with a monk named Joffrey. Turns out that this guy is not just one of the Blades, but their acting leader, and one of the few who know of the existence of Martin, the late Emperor's little hidden surprise. Boris, the Blade who survived the tutorial because he's the only one higher than first level, is the one who points us towards this location. Joffrey tells us that Martin is in a city called Kvatch, and after we ask him for assistance, he gives us access to a bunch of gear that'll line our pockets real nice. After a little trip to the Imperial City to cash in on these freebies, our next destination is Kvatch. Sounds easy, right? As we make our way there, the sight of refugees in tents can only mean good things. But as we'll come to find out here in a sec when we meet up with a guard, Savlian Matthias, I think that's how you pronounce that, we come to find out that Kvatch has come down with a sudden case of forced population control. When kidnapping goes wrong. See, the Daedra, the demon-like creatures whom our cultist buddies back in the tutorial go nuts for, are also here for Martin because they're quite keen on uniting the late Emperor with his last son, which will appease their big boss greatly. However, we're not going to let that happen, and by golly, if we have to shut down an entire Oblivion gate by ourselves just to prove a point, then we're going to do it. The stunted scamps, the weakest of the Daedric creatures outside of the gate, aren't too tough thanks to our shock spells. Daedra have a weakness to shock-based magic, so it's always worth investing in that sub-school of destruction magic should you play a caster, like our, hero. I tell this survivor to take a hike because I don't want him hogging my experience points. He can go level up his blade skill somewhere else. As for our journey to the core of the Oblivion gate, we're going to take it nice and slow, try to isolate the stunted scams, fight them one-on-one. Two-on-one's not too bad, so long as we don't let them get close to us. Their shoulder ram is a lot stronger than their fireball. Thanks to being able to wait for 1 hour and fully heal, we can get there. There's a reason why the tortoise beat the hare. As we dispose of the stunted scamp guarding the door here, it takes 4 sparks to take out a scamp, so a shocking touch is more magicka conservative. But shock is safer because it's ranged. Upon reaching the interior, we're pretty lucky here, as there's 2 fonts of magicka to our left and right, so we can use that to help us conserve our resources as we take out the stunted scamps. Joining the fight here in a sec is a Dremora, the more humanoid-looking Daedra. Like their more monstrous counterparts, they too seem to have a weakness to shock, which just makes our go-to spells all the better here. Definitely glad we made some Restore Magicka potions before coming here. Alchemy is also a great skill to invest in if you're playing a caster, because intelligence governs the total magicka points you have, so the higher your magicka pool, the more spells you cast. The level of the school of magic you cast from, the higher it is, the less magicka spells cost, so it goes hand in hand with that. Taking a note from General Oliver's wait-and-see strategy, we are now at the prison tower here, and the guard wants to talk to us, but I'm not in the mood for talking. I like to speak through action. With the sigil keep key in our possession, we can go ahead and make our way to the core of the Oblivion Gate. I mean, technically it's the sigil, but the sigil is effectively the core of any Oblivion Gate, because once you remove the sigil, which powers the entire Oblivion Gate, you remove it, and the gate collapses. So if I call it core, then you know what I mean. I'm referring to the sigil. A pretty fun fight up here, too. We got some Dremora to take out. Having to fight melee Dremora and caster Dremora at the same time, that'll certainly keep us on our toes, because as we're trying to gain distance, we have to make sure we don't get shot in the back by a lightning bolt or something. And as for the sigil stones, not only do they destabilize the Oblivion Gate, but you can use them to enchant an item. And going back to something I said a bit earlier in the run, where I said I would allow myself to use certain enchanted items, like enchanting our clothing and stuff. Some of the effects I think will be okay. I did bring up Chameleon and how powerful the effect is, and right away, just not even going to bother with that. Those are banned unless I specify otherwise, because Chameleon is pretty broken in my opinion. Each sigil comes with a random enchantment, and if I do get something that comes with Chameleon, I'll just slap it on a piece of armor or something that I'm not going to use, and then sell it. Fortify Magicka, though, fine by me. Now, just because we've shut the Oblivion Gate doesn't mean that we're in the clear. We're going to join back up with Guard Captain Mattias. We're going to storm the front of Kvatch, take out the stunted scamps occupying it, and then we can make our way to the chapel where Martin, who is a priest of Akatosh, is going to be chilling out with any other survivors in there. And judging by the looks of it, there aren't too many. As we go ahead and meet up with Martin, we tell him why we're here and why the Daedra are here. And naturally, he's a bit put off thinking that we think he's the Emperor's son, but after we explain him to him, it makes sense, enough for him to at least trust us to escort him back to Wayne Priory, which is under attack by the Mythic Dawn, the group of cultists who attacked us in the Blades back in the tutorial. Before heading back to Wayne Priory, though, I figured I'd go ahead and just finish cleaning up Kvatch. We don't have to do this, it is a side quest, but since we're here, it's good XP, we can get it out of the way, and we can fight some tougher enemies in the form of scamps who are not stunted. But since we have so much backup between the Kvatch guards, as well as a patrol of Imperial legionaries who just happen to see the commotion, it's not too hard. Unfortunately for the good count here, we are just a bit off the mark, and he did die while we were coming here, or maybe he's been dead for a while. However, with his signet ring, we can bring it back to Mattias and let him know. That way he and the survivors at least have some closure. And this will be important for a bit later on in the story. With all of this becoming a hero of Kvatch out of the way, now we're gonna head on back to Wayne Priory. And that Mythic Dawn guy is real nice to let the stable keeper let us know what's going on. I love how unintentionally hilarious the physics in this game can be. Anyway, turns out that Joffrey and some of his fellow brothers are under attack. One of them's already been slain. However, Joffrey's at church, and he must have really gotten the mother of all blessings from Akatosh, because he is set to Essential, which means he actually can't die for a while. Not really a fair fight for the Mythic Dawn goons. And it turns out that once we fend these guys off, that the Amulet of Kings has been stolen, but luckily for us, we have Martin's Septim. We have to take him to Cloud Ruler Temple, which we can just fast travel to, so a little bit of tension taken out there. I do think it's kind of hilarious, though, that because Joffrey and Martin are essential at this point in time, if you want to really have some fun in some dungeons, you can take them with you, and pretty much guarantee your survival. Anyway, Martin gives an awkward speech in front of the Blades, and can't really blame him because he went from a simple priest, his terms not mine, to being the heir of Uriel Septim, which means he has his own band of bodyguards to serve him as he sees fit, and thankfully for us, Martin is a good egg. Speaking of good eggs, Joffrey tells us to go ahead and head back to the Imperial City where we can make contact with Boris, who has been tracking the Mythic Dawn ever since the events of the tutorial. And as we do rendezvous with Boris, we catch him at a tavern, and once we meet up with him, he informs us that he's been followed by a rather inconspicuous figure just sitting in the corner. He wants us to follow him after the person who's been trailing him follows him into the cellar basement. As we get down there, we do see that Boris' suspicions were correct, but unfortunately for this Mythic Dawn goon, Boris also has the ultimate blessing of Akatosh, set essential, for the time being. Upon getting our hands on the Mythic Dawn commentaries, he points us towards the Arcane University. A mage named Tarmina tells us what these commentaries are, gives us her copy. We have to go track down the 3rd and the 4th volumes. The 3rd one's easy enough. We track down some Bosmer who bought the book, and once we tell him that the Mythic Dawn were responsible for the assassination of the Emperor and his sons, he gives us the 3rd volume rather readily. He also lets us know that there's a secret meeting spot in the sewers where we can possibly get our hands on the 4th copy. We report back to Boris, and we're in luck because it turns out that the Blades actually use the sewers to get around the city covertly. He knows them well, and he can escort us there, meaning that Boris has our backs when we meet with this sponsor that Gwynas, whatever the Bosmer's name is, told us about. And getting to the sponsor's secret meeting spot is very easy. The sewers have rats, crabs, and goblins, and, well, since we've been doing a lot of the heavy lifting around here, Boris needs to level up his blade skill. We can designate his custom class as Pest Control. Oh, and real quick, after this, we have to go back to Tarmina, but all we gotta do is return the 3rd and 4th volumes to her, and she deciphers them for a day, so after this little tidbit here, we're gonna skip over that. But enough of getting ahead of myself here. Once we get there and wait for an hour because it's the best mechanic ever, Boris tells us that he wants to be the one to meet with the sponsor. Boris wants payback, but we have to relieve him of pest control duty because now we are going to be on the clock, and all he has to do is just watch our 6. As we make our way inside, we have to sit at the table, and that will get the sponsor, Raven Cameron, to appear. It didn't seem to work the first time. Maybe I got up too fast, so not a problem. I go back, sit down again, and this time Raven spawns. Unfortunately for Raven, he doesn't speak Lightningese, otherwise he would understand the meaning of this greeting, so he attacks us, or tries to anyway. He suits up. Good thing metal conducts electricity. Now, because we took him out so fast, his 2 little bodyguards didn't even get a chance to come across the walkway here. But I'm a believer in leaving no loose ends, so we're gonna take these guys out as well, and Boris even gets in on a bit of the action too. Must have finally gotten his blade skill to apprentice. So we leave the sewers with Boris, we go back to Tarmina, and she points us in the direction of a hidden little symbol inconspicuously in this cemetery that can pinpoint the location of our buddies over at the Mythic Dawn. Next up is the Shrine of Dagon, located in Lake Arius Caverns, so let's go. So we go to the entrance of the shrine, and I give the password in sparks and crackles, and unfortunately this guy doesn't get the memo. 3 sparks take him down. We got one more guy here at the front gate that we gotta take out, and this turned out to be a pretty fun fight. Normally this guy is very easy. I believe he's the weakest one here, but because I missed his spark, we had a fun little shootout. Switching to Shocking Touch, we take him down. I made sure to craft quite a few Restore Magicas before coming here, because, believe it or not, I still haven't used any of those Welcome Stones from the start of the run. That's partially due to me forgetting to use them, but that forgetfulness has also made me more resourceful. So the Shrine of Dagon naturally is crawling with Mythic Dawn goons, and this is always one of my favorite parts of any Oblivion playthrough I've done, whether it's this current challenge or casually. Spark and Shocking Touch are definitely the way to go for this place. I find myself seldom using the Flare spell anymore, despite the fact that we're only 1 level higher. But anyway, we're coming to the Shrine of Dagon because we want to try to get back the Amulet of Kings from Mankar Cameron, the right-hand man of Lord Mehrunes Dagon. I pay my respects by going fisticuffs with the statue here. Now, I may be only able to use Destruction Magic in combat, but when it comes to sacrilege and the defiling of a holy symbol, I think fisticuffs is okay. But after we get the blood flowing, I think it's time for us to engage in more of the real thing here. A lot of cultists down there, including Mankar, who, rather than trying to fight us, just leaves. You guys signed up for a real great boss. Naturally, these absolute masterminds, rather than swarming us all at once, decide to just come up 1 or 2 at a time and duke it out with us. You really got to admire the spines in some of these acolytes who come in with their fists at this maniac firing lightning bolts at them. We even dispose of Raven's sister and Mankar's daughter, Bruma Cameron. It's one more guy. Now that we're done with cleanup on aisle 4, we can go ahead and get Satan's Bible, and then free this Ixar-looking guy here. He looks like a punchy boy, but all he seems to do is run away. That's fine, we can use him to soak some damage in our stead. Just because we rescued him does not mean that we run a charity here. Either way, though, not really an issue because the Mythic Dawn are absolutely horrible at the one job they have. I found this particular room to be the most challenging of everything else in here. But, well, we've seen how that song and dance went, so let's go ahead, hit this lever, switch whatever, and then we can make our way out of Lake Arius Caverns. Next up on our travel wish list is Cloud Ruler Temple, where Martin is, and he'll be so happy to receive the Demonomicon. When we do report back, Martin is a little frightened at the fact that we're holding such a powerful artifact. Martin has dabbled in Daedric magic in the past, which is very fortunate for us, so he can help come up with a way to track down Mankar Cameron. In the meantime, we have to report to Joffrey because there are 2 Mythic Dawn spies operating out of Bruma, which is in very close proximity to Cloud Ruler Temple. So while Martin prepares for the mother of all final exams, let's go and take out these spies, shall we? The first one is a Redguard named Jarl, though I think that's a cover-up, a pseudonym for her real name, Baroness von Bad Voice Actress. Thanks to the key we looted off of her, we can gain access to a house that not only does she live in, but the second spy, and this second spy is a fair bit tougher, still no match for us. After going to the basement to secure the plans, we'll head back to Joffrey, report in. Joff is quite pleased with our results, and he tells us that Martin has made some progress. There just might be a way to stop Mankar Cameron and to retrieve the Amulet of Kings. Turns out Martin has in fact made some progress. What we need to do next is we have to obtain a Daedric artifact, and there's a whole bunch of these that we can collect. There are specific requirements for each one, and I'm thinking that for our Elder Scrolls Oblivion challenges, that we can try to collect a different one every run. For this run, we're going to start off with Azura's Star, because it's really the easiest one to get, and it's the one that the game kind of pushes you in the direction of. Actually, Sheogorath's is the easiest one to get, I stand corrected. And now, before we go and obtain Azura's Star, I decided to engage in the good old pastime of getting sidetracked, and well, originally I wasn't going to leave this in because I was just kind of trying to get some destruction XP, but oh, you guys are not ready for this. So we're tracking down the son of the Count of Shadinal, Farrell, and he and his little band of goons charged headfirst into this Oblivion gate. Swell enough intentioned, right? And that means we have some temporary companions to help us get through this gate. Bear in mind that Farrell and the rest of the Knights of the Thorn are not marked as essential, so if he dies, well, that does directly change the outcome of this quest. So I'm battling this scamp one-on-one, right? We're able to take him out with a couple of lightning bolts, then Farrell gets in front of me. Mind you, this is his fault. And he starts swinging at me like a maniac. I'm like, man, you're the one who got in front of me. Maybe he's trying to learn our Lightningese language. I was kind of hoping that other Knight of Thorn would help me out here, but no such luck. You gotta love how Farrell's even smiling with glee at us as he's trying to murder us with a steel sword. You gotta be wondering what's going through the minds of these Dromora here when they see a fellow Dunmer attacking us. They're just like, wait, what the hell is going on here? Kill them all. Well, unfortunately for these Dromora, it turns out that we have killed them. We can always tell the Count that Farrell wanted to learn the meaning of shock value. Right, Count?
You have some nerve addressing me after slaying my son. You're lucky I didn't have you executed on the spot. Now, get out of my sight.
Well, we know what really happened there. Well, let's go get that star. Azura, one of the many among the Daedric Prince Pantheon, has a neat little shrine, and she wants an offering before we can communicate with her. Well, all we gotta do is get some glow dust, which you can either get here off of one of these will-o-wisps. The main ingredient back in the Imperial City sells them too. And we have to offer this to Azura either at dusk or dawn. And this nice little follower here tells us all about it. All we gotta do is get him on our side, get him to like us a bit. So nothing like a good old speechcraft system to charm our way to getting that information. So once dawn breaks, we can go ahead and talk to Azura, and she wants us, in order for us to receive her eponymous star, to go to this nice little cave where 5 of her followers died trying to kill a vampire lord, only to become vampires themselves. We're a complete stranger and not really faithful to Azura or any of the Daedric princes, and she's cool with sending us, but doesn't trust her own faithful to do it. I think she has to reevaluate her priorities. Now, there are 5 of them to kill, and the first one is by itself, and funny enough, I forgot what spell I had hotkeyed, so there was that shock misclick. Still not gonna affect us too much. This is the weakest of the 5 vampires in this cave. And because we're far enough away from the others, that good old-fashioned wait-and-see trick works like a charm. Next up are a pair of vampires, a female orc wielding a giant claymore, and a mage whom we can dispose of pretty quickly. As for the female orc knight, she's a fair bit tougher, second hardest mob in here. Did I say claymore? I meant giant battle axe. Fitting, as an orc racial in this game does offer a bonus to blunt weapons, because when you think of blunt weapons, you think of axes, right? Anyway, that's 3 down, 2 more to go. That vampire dust we've been looting is going to be awesome for our alchemy. Though speaking of alchemy, I should have come to this place a bit more prepared than I was. If we suffer our first death in this run, it's going to be because I underprepared, and the leader, I'm assuming it's the leader, takes us out despite our most valiant of efforts, but let's cross that bridge when we get to it, which is right about now. Just like his female counterpart, he's accompanied by a mage, and luckily for us, we can just straight up one-shot this mage, so it really is just a one-on-one with us and the leader of these little, heroes turned vampires. But hey, who says that vampires can't be heroes? This guy has a fair bit more health here, so we are absolutely at the mercy of our magicka regen after we use the last of our potions of sorcery. It doesn't really help that during this encounter, my aim is a bit off, so magicka be getting wasted, yo. So by running around waiting for our magicka to regen just so we can take a blast at this guy, we do take quite a bit of damage and burn through a fair bit of healing ourselves, and I think we contracted vampirism here as well. But with his health, we are certainly going to outlast him. And right on cue, one more shocking touch, down he goes. I gotta say, I was expecting to die down here because I haven't been in Azura's little quest dungeon in quite a while, so cool that we did it on the first try. After we report to the shrine and report of our valorous deed, Azura thanks us for our service with a very lengthy speech, yada yada yada. I just want the Azura star, man. And just like clockwork, I end up getting it, and now we can head on back to Cloud Ruler Temple and give it to Martin. Just know that any Daedric artifact that you give to him to use for this ritual will be consumed, and Azura Star is basically a reusable soul gem, something we don't have to really worry about this run, because destruction magic and soul gems don't go together at all. We give it to Martin for the ritual, he tells us to go to Joffrey, Joffrey tells us to head back to Bruma because there's an Oblivion gate there, and we do have to clear this one to make progress. Before that, though, we're gonna head to our humble little abode, Frostcrag Spire. Go ahead and place these Mage Tallow candle boxes, which costed quite a bit of money. And here we can craft magic in place of doing everything to get into the Arcane University. Now, we might have the money for the Mage Tallow candle boxes, but crafting spells costs quite a bit of money, and we're gonna need a bit more destruction skill than what we've got. That said, we should not be too far off from Journeyman, so while I can't quite make the spells I'd want to, we'll think of something as we head over to Bruma, help them close the Oblivion Gate, as you do. It's good brainstorming fodder. Alright, time to head on over to Bruma. Let's go. So for this gate, we have some backup in the form of Guard Captain Bird and a couple of dudes who are brave enough to enter the Oblivion Gate. Now, the word about Bird is that he's also set to Essential for this part of the story, so this Oblivion Gate is really not that hard. Funny enough, the first one you have to go into for the main story, I always found that to be a bit more challenging than this one. I'm not gonna complain about that, though, because Bird is pretty good in combat, and that means we can accelerate our 1 hour wait-and-see strategy for clearing through areas like this. As for the other 2 guards, I was gonna make a remark about how they were fairly easy to save, at least like last time I played, but, well, when they went and got themselves killed immediately, they killed my vibe. Still more useful than the Count of Shadenall's brat. Speaking of that guy, because I wasn't able to talk to the Count, I was able to keep the Signet Ring. The gold I can get for that has more value than Farewell's life ever had. So yeah, gonna go ahead and just cut straight to the core of the Oblivion Gate here, where we can go ahead and grab that handy-dandy Descendant Sigil Stone. Oh, and there are some Dremora in here. With our destruction magic power and Bird just being pretty awesome in combat, we make very short work of these guys. After a certain point in the story, Bird will lose his essential status, as will Boris and Joffrey, but we'll get to that. And we end up getting a pretty decent enchantment for anything we can wear, at least, from the Sigil Stone. That also scales with your level, and because we're still level 2 and we're not going to go much higher than that, that's about what we get, but I don't mind at all. After reporting our success to Joffrey, he sends us over to Martin, and then we get sent over to a place called Sancretor. We have to obtain another artifact, or more specifically, we need the blood of a god, and because the dude who wore the armor of Septim was ordained as a deity after his death, and his blood is still somehow on this armor after centuries of not using it, that fits the criteria. Very lenient, if you ask me. I have to wonder how blood is still on that armor. Maybe when Septim was bathing in the blood of his enemies, he was wearing his armor while doing it. That's one way to ensure that your trusty armor becomes a divine artifact well after your death when you no longer have use for it. Anyway, Sancretor is ripe with undead. Inside, it's almost all ghosts. We have to take out 5 skeletons. 4 of those skeletons belong to fabled blades of the past, and the 5th one is some warden, and we just need him to get a key. The ghosts are extremely easy for us to take out, and because we're fighting these 4 guys one-on-one every time we're going after them to release their souls, they're really not that difficult either. They are decked out in some pretty sweet gear that can get us a fair bit of gold. That is gold that goes towards the endeavor, that is our investment in spellcrafting. That said, I gotta say, I'm pretty proud of our protagonist here for doing as well as he is with Shocking Touch, Spark, and the occasional use of the Flare spell. But I know that we're gonna need some sturdier stuff than what we're using for later on in the challenge. Speaking of getting further in the challenge, with the first of 4 big bads down, we can go ahead and just skip over everything else right to when we get the Arbor of Septim, because, well, this place, as you saw, is pretty easy for our character. Once we're inside, these 4 dudes go ahead and undo the barrier that has contained the Armor of Septim. Maybe that's how it still has its blood on it, but I prefer my theory. Makes a lot more sense in my opinion. After getting the blood-soaked in enemy's artifact, Martin sends us to another undead crib called Miskarkand. Like Sancretor, it's loaded with undead, but instead of ghosts, there are skeletons and zombies. Way to miss a Ghost and Goblins reference there, Bethesda. And these undead seem to be feuding with the local goblins because, hey, if I were a little green, I wouldn't want these plethora of walking nasty skin and bones on my turf either. We are here because the MacGuffin Martin wants resides within this legit awesome dungeon. It's called a Great Welkenstone. You know those crystal magicka restoring items? I was so happy to get back in Vilverin that I haven't used it all this run due to reasons of being derpy. Well, let me rectify that error real quick. As you can see, the zombies are fairly tanky and take quite a few hits to put down, but since they can only melee, we don't have to worry about them that much. As for the skeletons and the goblins, they're pretty easy too, but like the zombies, the skirmishers, though not as tanky, will take a few hits of our lightning spells to put down. Still though, now that I'm actually using the Welkenstones, this place, at least up until we get to the Great Welkenstone, shouldn't be too bad. And this place is absolutely loaded with Welkenstones, so we're gonna be leaving here with more than we came in with and used. That's pretty sweet. Making our way to where the Great Welkenstone is located, we pick it up, and the King of Miskarkand is a little upset with us. Now watch this. The king can absorb spells and sometimes reflect them, and if I was a second slower here, that would have been our first death. So not only are we completely useless against this guy, he can practically one-shot us. That said, I do my best to mount an offense here. I wouldn't mind trying to take out the zombie guardians, if not for the fact that this Lich of Royalty couldn't straight up one-shot us with a lightning bolt spell of his. After realizing that this is a futile endeavor, well, I don't have to kill the King of Miskarkand. I did get the Great Welkenstone, so I can run away from here. Problem is, the king has a key that would unlock this door, but that's not going to stop me from picking it. Now that our strategy is full speed ahead, don't turn around, we have to hope that the Lich, as well as his guardians, don't catch up. And considering how fast we are thanks to me making acrobatics and athletics 2 major skills, we seem to have quite the lead on these guys, and because I did leave some goblins alive, hopefully if they do catch up to us, they'll fight the goblins like the other undead do here. I assume Lich Big Cheese is the one giving that order, so hey, maybe he can have some fun while we leave here with our prized possession. It does seem that they stopped tracking us, and that's great because we can fast travel to Cloud Ruler Temple, turn this into Martin, and we're going to run a very important errand before progressing with the main story. Talking to this wonderful spirited entrepreneur, he sells us something that we call chems in the Fallout universe, called skooma. Now, you might wonder why I'm getting this. Trust me, it's going to help us immensely with what's to come. I gotta say too, this guy having 400 gold is pretty small to barter with, considering that we're all the way down in Bravil, and that's a fair bit away from where we're supposed to be. It is a little bit out of the way, but absolutely worth it, and you can only catch this guy in the late hours of the night. I believe it's 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. Remember earlier when I said we didn't have to help reclaim Kvatch and how it'd be important for later in the run? Well, the last piece of Martin's puzzle is a Great Sigil Stone. Lord Dagon's forces seem to be fixated on Bruma. No doubt the consequence of the Paraspies operating from there before we took care of them. Any cities we save from Oblivion gates throughout the course of the game will lend us aid to help defend Bruma from the imminent attack. We've helped Anvil, Skingrod, and of course Kvatch. Technically we helped Shadenall too, but the Count's still mad at us and blames us for his son trying a TikTok clout-chasing stunt well before its time. Basically, Bruma is acting as bait for this great gate to open up so that we can snag the Sigil Stone, and the Countess of Bruma is, well, a little concerned about the extremity of this plan, but it's the only way to ensure that we can retrieve the Amulet of Kings from Mankar Cameron. As we prepare to defend Bruma against the hordes of Daedra and Dremora, Martin gives a speech that's pretty cool, though I'm not sure why my subtitles aren't catching it. We have to ensure that our forces remain intact until the Great Gate opens up, and then we go in and cause some real damage of our own. Speaking of damage, I have crafted a spell. Let's see how it goes. Oh yeah, I think that's going to be awesome for what's to come after this place. Now, this is the battle where Boris, Joffrey, and Bird lose their essential status. We ourselves do not have to participate, but our participation does increase the chances that those characters will survive. Unfortunately, Boris did fall in battle here. Unfortunately, all three of those characters died in this battle, so let's make sure their sacrifice is not in vain. Once inside of the Great Gate, we have 15 minutes to get that Great Sigil Stone, which means no wait-and-see strategy for us. We gotta get through here, and we gotta get through here real fast. And what's great about trying to go fast is that there is a nice little way to skip over all the little sub-dungeons, I guess we'll call them for lack of a better term, the other rooms that you can't access here. Well, there's no need to do that when the power of parkour is on your side. And it's right around this time you might be thinking, hey Roz, why did you get that skooma? You haven't needed it so far. Ah, well my friends, in order to help us go faster, one of the benefits of skooma consumption is that it boosts your speed by 60 for 20 seconds. Combine that with our passable acrobatics and athletics score, and suddenly we are going to be zigzagging all across this place. And now because we're on such a serious time crunch, we're not going to be fighting anybody here. That certainly will not stop the Dremora from trying to take us out, and despite theirs and the Scamp's best efforts to the contrary, we're able to speed by these guys just fine. And just like the standard Sigil Stones, once you grab the Great Sigil Stone, the core of the Oblivion Gate just collapses, and then we are pretty much home scot-free. That wonderful businessman truly is an unsung hero of Cyrodiil. With everything in place, Martin has all the key reagents needed to perform the ritual to help us stop Mankar Cameron. It's our one-way ticket into paradise, the personal domain of the right-hand man of Lord Mehrunes Dagon. I always found paradise to be a really cool area, and for sure a highlight every time I've played through this game. Mankar communicates with you throughout the entirety of your stay here, and while he's waxing philosophical, his logic is actually quite interesting. Turns out that Tamriel, the land in which Cyrodiil, along with many other regions, calls home, is a former Daedric plane of existence. Mehrunes Dagon wants what's his by birthright according to Mankar, and the Mythic Dawn have been the tools used for Dagon and Mankar to get to this point. The reason why they wanted the Septum line to be purged from Cyrodiil is because they're the only ones who can wield the power the Amulet of Kings commands. Truly a fitting artifact for such a long-lasting royal bloodline. This is why Martin is such a threat to Dagon's vision. Remember earlier when I said that Martin had dabbled in Daedric magic before? What a twist it would be in an alternate universe if Martin, during this dark time of his life, took an interest in the teachings and philosophy of Lord Dagon. I'll get back to that here in just a sec. Gotta give this fine gentleman here a classic good old lightning knees greeting. And for some reason he charges at us and decides that throwing a snowball is the best course of action. Ah, poor guy, he's all tuckered out and we have the Bands of the Chosen, which will allow us to enter the grotto. But getting back to my point from before, anyone who has been here on this channel for a while knows that I love coming up with what-if narratives during challenge runs. I didn't do that for this run because I want to get back into the spirit of all things Cyrodiil, but hey, maybe one day. I actually do have an idea in mind, not the one I mentioned, but hey, maybe that's one I'll add to the list for a future video. And gotta say, we got our custom spell at the right time because these little raptor dudes that we've been fighting, normally they can be pretty tough, especially for low-level characters who have no armor, like us. But like all Daedra, they are weak to shock spells. And a quick reminder that we have to equip the Bands of the Chosen to enter the Forbidden Grotto. It gives us 1 armor, and it makes us take 50% more fire damage, although because we're a Dunmer, that would be reduced to 25%. So as we speed our way on through here, nothing terribly interesting, up until we come across this goon right here, a guy who isn't with the Mythic Dawn, but found his way to Paradise, and much like the denizens, the humanoid denizens here, turns out Paradise ain't so great, certainly doesn't live up to its name. But the cultist wants to help us out because, well, he's had a lot of time to ponder, his words not mine. So he comes up with a little scheme to trick the Daedra into thinking that he's making us a prisoner, and you might think that he would betray us here, but no, homeboy here is true to his word. And although he's not essential, he can keep coming back to life because he is in Paradise. And the rest of the grotto is pretty much what you've seen up to this point. We fight raptor dudes, we fight some Mythic Dawn goons. Not too hard to worry about, especially since Eldamel's not too bad with shock spells himself. So let's get to when we escape the grotto, courtesy of Eldamel helping us out. We run into a pair of familiar faces, Raven and Ruma Cameron, and you guys know how we greet named characters who are intended to talk to us by this point. Now, just like with Eldamel, because those two are in Paradise, they can respawn. Taking them out here will isolate Mankar Cameron when we're about to go kick down the door and fight him, so that decision was in fact a strategic one, and immensely satisfying. Now, as we get ready to approach Mankar, there's a lot that he has to say, but as far as I'm concerned, he can talk to the hand. Unfortunately for us, Mankar passively can reflect spells. He has a small chance to do that, and of course we got hit by it, so we're not off to a great start here. When we are able to hit Mankar, it looks like we do okay damage. Unfortunately for us, Mankar can also silence us. To make matters worse, his son and daughter have respawned and joined the fight, so now it's pretty much 4-on-1 since Eldamel's out cold. He can also come back, so at least we have him in our corner. And we do seem to outspeed them, which is awesome. However, despite our best efforts to the contrary, Mankar and his goons take us down. That was our first death this entire run, not bad. As for our second attempt, things start off the exact same as we eat our own spell. This feels like a game of cat and mouse between us and Mankar, though I'm not sure which one is which. We have solid advantages over the other, but if we can slip in a spell or two, we should be able to clench victory. And you know what I found to be utterly hilarious during this boss fight? Remember how I forgot to use my Welkin Stones up till near the end of the game? If I didn't forget, and actually used them when I should have, like back at the Gutted Mine when we were channeling our inner blade, then I might not have had enough to go around to stand up to Mankar here. I wasn't intending for any sort of Chekhov's gun this run, but it feels like the clunkiest one I've ever seen, and I'm proud to have been the one to pull that trigger. Heck, all we needed were a couple of shots of our custom-made spells, and Mankar went down with his order of Dunyan Rings. With the Amulet of Kings in our possession, we can head back to Cloud Ruler Temple because Paradise kicked us out. Give it to Martin, and Martin can channel its power to light the flames, to block off the gates of Oblivion, to close shut the jaws of Oblivion, as his father said. As we get there, Martin, now Emperor, meets up with Chancellor Okado, who's been trying to hold things together in the absence of a Emperor, However, there is a, shall we say, halt to proceedings, as it turns out that not only have the Oblivion Gates opened in full around the Imperial City, but there's a certain sense of doom looming overhead, but we'll get to that here in a sec. Now, these Dremora are fairly strong, but thanks to our custom lightning spell, they go down really fast. I love to see that. I did a better job on that spell than I thought. I haven't spellcrafted in quite a while. I also love how you can wait inside of the palace there. They're just like, oh, there's an invasion? Oh, yeah, sure, I got an hour. Our objective here during the invasion is to get Martin to the shrine so that he can invoke the ritual to cast from the power of the Amulet of Kings in order to seal away Oblivion, in hopes that Mehrunes Dagon is not able to set foot here. And I figure, hey, why not cut loose and have some fun? We are gonna be using our weaker Shocking Touch spell just to conserve some magicka when we can. However, despite our best efforts to the contrary and downing yet another delicious vial of skooma, we see our good Emperor headed our way, and it turns out that Mehrunes Dagon has in fact entered the mortal plane. All hope seems lost, the mission failed, except that it didn't, because Martin knows exactly what he can do with the Amulet of Kings. However, this is, shall we say, a one-time trick. Thankfully, Dagon was feeling sporting and let us pass, so as we talk to Martin for one final time, the Amulet of Kings is shattered, and he transforms into an avatar of Akatosh. I only have one question, or maybe I missed this, but you know how we cannot equip the Amulet of Kings, but Mankar is able to equip it, so doesn't that mean that Mankar is a Dragonborn as well? That's the whole plot twist with the Septims, is that they're Dragonborn. That's gonna sound familiar to the Skyrim enthusiasts among you. But anyway, Martin here is about to save the day, which is super awesome, and gotta say, I had so much fun with this run. You have no idea. Like, I love the Fallout content, and I have a smaller Pokemon channel I upload to every now and then. By every now and then, I mean usually once a week. But being able to pivot to something entirely new, content that I want to add to this channel, just feels awesome, and man, just going through this game, it just brings back so many memories. Simpler times of when I was a youngin'. I just hope that you guys also enjoyed that run. And speaking of Elder Scrolls Oblivion content, our next run is going to be Elder Scrolls Oblivion as a bandit. Next Fallout 3 run, probably going to be the Faction Warriors Oasis Treeminder run, and next Fallout New Vegas run is Fallout New Vegas and Lonesome Road, voters picked it, as a Talon Company mercenary. I got a lot to say and show about that run, so I'm looking forward to when that's uploaded. I know some of you guys have been looking forward to that for a while now. At any rate, thank you once again for watching, and I will see you at the next video. Later.